I have seen the end of worlds, not with the grand, fiery spectacles of a prophet, but with the quiet, suffocating dust of shattered trust. I have witnessed the slow, agonizing dissolution of a soul, not through physical torment, but through the precise, surgical extraction of everything that gives life meaning. And in that silent dismantling, I have found a grim satisfaction, a cold, unyielding justice that transcends the simplistic scales of law. This is a story of such an end, of a life meticulously stripped bare, of a reputation meticulously burned to ash. It began, as many such stories do, with a flicker of joy, quickly overshadowed by a darkness I thought I had long since buried. It began with a woman named Catherine and a man I once called my friend, a man named Marcus. The small town I call home, a place of roughly 30,000 souls, holds more than just memories for me. It holds the ghosts of a life that might have been. I grew up here, the kind of childhood woven with the simple threads of enduring friendship and burgeoning love. Rachel and I, we were inseparable from the age of 6. Our paths, like two rivers, merged and flowed together, from innocent games to the first awkward stirrings of romance at 16. By 18, the city beckoned, a few hours' drive away, promising opportunity. We answered its call, building a life, a home, a future. At 20, we were married, and 2 years later, the news came that would reshape our world. A child, a son, was on the way. Then, disaster, stark and brutal, descended. 5 weeks before her maternity leave was to begin, an industrial shelving unit, a monstrosity of metal and neglect, collapsed at her workplace. It crushed her, and with her, our unborn child. Instantly, I was told. 2 of her colleagues were also caught in the wreckage, one condemned to a life in a wheelchair, the other losing a leg. The company, in its infinite corporate wisdom, had chosen to use decrepit, unsafe shelving, opting for the illusion of cost-saving over the sanctity of human life. I have not, and will never, truly forgive those executives, those architects of a decision that cleaved my life in two, extinguishing the brightest flame I had ever known. In the aftermath, the company offered compensation, a paltry sum they called it, delivered with the oily smoothness of a settlement. I called it blood money. They wanted to settle out of court, to bury their culpability beneath layers of legal jargon and sealed agreements. I, on the other hand, wanted something far more visceral. Their blood, their careers, their freedom. The media, thankfully, became an unwelcome ally, shining a harsh, unforgiving light on their corporate malfeasance. Politicians, sensing an opportunity for public grandstanding, joined the chorus of condemnation. The case, a grueling 3-year ordeal, was settled in court. The payout, for all involved, was nearly 10 times their initial, insulting offer. Fines rained down, careers dissolved. Executives faced the unforgiving steel bars of a prison cell. It was a cold victory, a hollow echo against the silence left by Rachel and our son, but it was a victory nonetheless. During those years, the world continued to spin, unmindful of my personal catastrophe. My mother, a beacon of unwavering strength, moved in, a silent anchor against the surging tide of my grief. I often wonder if I would have simply dissolved without her steady presence. My job in telecommunications, a mundane constant, offered a promotion, one that demanded extensive travel across the state. I negotiated a concession, a small office in my hometown's branch, allowing me to serve both the broader region and the familiar streets where Rachel and I had once walked. It became a rhythm, a week or two in the city, a week back home, then another week or two traversing the state. After a year, the familiar pull of home prompted me to buy a house in town, a place to call my own, to return to after my travels, free from the gentle oversight of my parents. This house, this sanctuary, would later become a stage for a different kind of tragedy. For years crawled by, each day a slow unfurling of quiet resilience. Then, the story truly began. I had just returned from a trip, the drone of the highway still humming in my ears, the artificial chill of the air conditioning clinging to my clothes. I was checking in at my hometown office when Marcus walked in. He was the branch's managing director, a man whose face was etched with the same lines of time as mine, a man I had known since childhood, though our paths had diverged until my return. Since then, A close friendship had blossomed, built on shared history and mutual respect. He greeted me with the usual pleasantries, asked about my travels, then, with an almost conspiratorial air, invited me to a house party he was hosting that very evening. Short notice, he acknowledged, but I accepted. The thought of a few drinks, a few hours of camaraderie, held an undeniable appeal. It was at that party that I met Catherine. She was a new hire, fresh to town, navigating the unfamiliar currents of a new community, a new job. Marcus introduced us, and from the first moment, there was a spark, an undeniable connection. It felt almost fated. The cliché is unavoidable, but it felt as if I was looking at Rachel again, a ghost of happiness, a flicker of what had been. I will spare you the meandering details of courtship, the slow dance of two souls discovering each other. 2 years passed, marked by shared laughter, quiet evenings, and the rebuilding of a life I thought was forever shattered. We decided to take the next step. She moved into my house, the one I had bought, the one that held the lingering scent of my past. For nearly a year, everything was a soft harmony. Catherine charmed my parents, earning their affection and their quiet approval. Rachel's parents, too, expressed their happiness, their relief that I had found someone to bring joy back into my life. But then, a discordant note began to hum beneath the surface, a subtle shift in the melody. Skype calls, once long and lingering, would abruptly end. Neighbors, with that peculiar, detached observation of small-town life, would casually mention seeing a car, described with unmistakable specificity as Marcus's, parked consistently in the back alley behind my house whenever I was away. A strange, unfamiliar blouse, not mine, not hers, would appear in my wardrobe, a silent, unsettling testament to an unseen presence. All the signs, stark and undeniable, pointed to betrayal. Yet, when confronted, she offered explanations, smooth and practiced. Marcus, she said, would occasionally stop by for business discussions, never staying the night. I, in my desperate hope, in my ingrained trust, rationalized it away as paranoia, a ghost of past trauma clouding my judgment. But the feeling, that persistent, gnawing sensation that something was profoundly wrong, never truly receded. It was a low, insistent thrum, growing louder with each passing day. 6 months later, the truth shattered the fragile illusion. I had been in the city, closing a significant contract, the negotiations wrapping up earlier than anticipated. A sudden impulse, a whisper of desire for the familiar comfort of my own bed, prompted me to book an early flight home. Hours later, the familiar streets of my hometown unspooled before me. I drove down the back alley, a shortcut to my house, a way to arrive unnoticed, to surprise Catherine. But a different kind of surprise awaited me. A car, large and unmistakable, was blocking my back entrance gate. Confusion gave way to a cold, sinking dread. It was Marcus's car. The high hedge line, installed years ago for privacy, now served as an unwitting accomplice, concealing my approach. I pulled up behind his car, killed the engine, and stepped out. The evening air was cool, but a different kind of chill spread through me. Why was he here so late? Her claims of early departures echoed hollowly in my mind. As I approached the back of the house, a sliver of light from the kitchen window illuminated a scene that made my stomach drop, an icy plunge into a void of disbelief. There, on my kitchen bench, framed by the warm glow of the overhead light, were Catherine and Marcus, engaged in a primal, urgent act of betrayal. My close friend, my girlfriend, on my kitchen counter. I froze. Time, that relentless river, simply stopped. 1,000 questions, sharp and barbed, tore through my mind. Was this real? A grotesque nightmare? Why my house? Why my kitchen? A wave of profound defeat washed over me, heavy and suffocating. I turned, a shadow among shadows, and left without them ever knowing I had been there. I slid back into my car, the interior suddenly a suffocating coffin. Tears came, hot and relentless, blurring the world outside. I cried until the well of sadness ran dry, and then a different emotion, potent and destructive, began to simmer. Anger. The same cold, calcifying rage I had felt towards those responsible for Rachel's death. I wanted to hurt them. Badly. My mother, a steadfast pacifist, had instilled in me a deep-seated aversion to violence. But this this was different. This was not a fistfight in an alley. This was a violation of trust, a desecration of the sanctuary I had painstakingly rebuilt. I knew, with an absolute, chilling certainty, that I would punish them. I would dismantle their lives, piece by meticulous piece. And the time to begin was now. I backed my car up the alley, far enough to remain unseen, but close enough to keep Marcus's car in view. Then, I walked back to the gate, the hedge once again my silent accomplice, offering a perfect vantage point into the kitchen. I pulled out my phone and dialed Catherine's number. They were still entangled, lost in their sordid tableau, when her phone vibrated on the counter. Both of them, startled, looked at the caller ID. My name. A double take, a flicker of panic in their eyes. She hesitated, considering the call, then let it ring out, the silence a brief, damning reprieve. A few moments later, they resumed. I dialed again. This time, she answered, her voice a little breathless, a little too saccharine. As soon as she spoke, I hung up, melting back into the shadows and making my way to my car. Almost immediately, she called back. "Why are you calling so late?" she asked, a manufactured lightness in her tone. "I'm about 10 minutes from home," I replied, my voice an even, calm mask. "Didn't want to scare you by just walking in." A stunned silence on her end, then a burst of feigned delight. "Oh, darling. I'm so happy you're coming home." The call ended abruptly, she claiming she needed to get up and change. "Bye," I said, a single, perfectly timed word, and hung up. Moments later, Marcus's car roared to life. He peeled through the back gate, half-dressed, a frantic blur of panic and adrenaline. He shot down the alley, a bat out of hell, leaving a trail of dust and simmering dread. A small smile touched my lips. The fear, the exquisite terror of being caught, was a potent first taste of revenge. I waited, a deliberate pause, then turned my car into the exact spot where his had been moments before. The rest of the night was uneventful, a hollow charade of domesticity. It wasn't until she was deep in sleep, her breath even and soft beside me, that I slipped from the bed, a silent wraith, and made my way to my office down the hall. Sleep was a distant, unreachable shore. I needed to plan, and plan I did. The first delicate threads of their unraveling began to weave themselves in the quiet darkness of that night. My mother, a woman of gentle wisdom, had always championed pacifism, believing that cosmic karma, in its own time, would course-correct the injustices of the world. But on this occasion, I decided karma needed a more tangible hand, a deliberate push in the right direction. I would punish them, separately, but with the unified goal of absolute ruin. I knew about Marcus's secret. Nothing overtly destructive, but a quiet, carefully guarded drug habit. I had stumbled upon it accidentally, a scattering of cocaine and weed carelessly left out during a visit to his place. I had pretended not to see it, allowing him the illusion of discretion, but the knowledge, a silent weapon, had been filed away in the recesses of my mind. The first step was to acquire the means. I began making discreet inquiries among a few of my more unsavory clientele. My work in telecommunications, while ostensibly legitimate, sometimes intersected with individuals who operated on the fringes, individuals who could procure certain samples with a nod and a wink. A few days later, I had a decent enough stash, enough for my plan to unfold with precision. About a month later, I orchestrated a barbecue at my house. Friends, including Marcus, gathered, the air filled with the scent of grilling meat and camaraderie. I made sure Marcus's glass was never empty, subtly encouraging him to imbibe until he was sufficiently liquored up, his inhibitions softened, his judgment impaired. As the evening wound down, I insisted he stay the night, to sleep off the alcohol, concern etched convincingly onto my face. In the quiet hours before dawn, while Marcus was deep in a drunken slumber, I moved with methodical purpose. The drugs, along with an assortment of my personal belongings, small, easily identifiable items, were carefully placed. The biggest stash was tucked deep within the spare tire well of his car, a spot unlikely to be discovered in a casual glance. Other items were scattered subtly throughout his vehicle. Confident that he wouldn't stumble upon them in the coming weeks, as the rest of my plan took shape, I locked his car. I then drove him home, his slumped form oblivious, and placed additional drugs and a few more of my personal items in inconspicuous spots within his house. The groundwork for his downfall was laid. A few days later, I staged a break-in at my own home. A back pane of my kitchen door was expertly smashed, the door left ajar. The scene was set, a tableau of vulnerability. I then departed for the city, ostensibly for a flight related to work. The moment I landed, my phone buzzed with an urgent chorus of messages. My mother, her voice laced with panic, had discovered the smashed door and alerted the police. Catherine, her voice thick with manufactured tears, called next. Finally, a message from the local police requesting a call. I returned each call, informing the police that I was away on business, but would return the following week to assist with their investigation. While I was away, I arranged for Catherine to stay with my parents, ensuring she was safely out of the house. I also asked my father to coordinate with a local security company, arranging for the installation of cameras and an alarm system, but only after getting the explicit go-ahead from the police, ensuring the crime scene remained undisturbed. The stage for the next act was being prepared. Upon my return, I played the part of the distraught homeowner with practiced ease. "My God, I can't believe this has happened," I exclaimed, feigning shock and confusion. "Why would anyone do this?" I conducted a thorough check of the house, discovering that the specific items I had planted in Marcus's car and home were missing. A police report was duly filed, detailing this stolen property. The security company representative arrived, an earnest young man who walked Catherine and me through the intricacies of the new alarm system and camera setup. Then came the question, the one I had meticulously engineered the entire setup to elicit. Catherine, her voice a little shy, a little hesitant, asked it. "What happens if we are doing some business and don't want it recorded?" The feigned modesty was almost comical. I knew precisely why she was asking. The security rep, oblivious, smiled reassuringly. "Oh, that's a common question," he assured us, launching into an explanation of how to selectively disable specific cameras through the home computer, to protect your privacy, of course. As I walked him out, I casually posed another question, a seemingly innocuous security precaution. "If the cameras are turned off, could a notification be sent out? Just as a general alert." He readily agreed, returned inside, and showed me how to set up email notifications for camera deactivation. Fantastic, I thought, the pieces clicking into place. All I had to do was wait. At this juncture, recognizing the need for absolute legal fortification, I sought guidance from our legal advice. I needed to ensure that my impending plan, particularly the disentanglement from Catherine, would be legally ironclad, that she would have no claim to my assets or equity. As the sole beneficiary of Rachel's estate, I could not risk any unforeseen financial complications. The generous community there directed me to an exceptional lawyer. He provided the crucial assurance. Despite our nearly 4 years of dating, we had not been living together long enough to be classified as a de facto couple in the eyes of the law. Furthermore, my sole payment of all utilities and her lack of rent payments definitively demonstrated her lack of financial standing. To eliminate any lingering doubt, he drafted an unassailable document, a legal shield against any potential future claims. The following week, my company presented me with an offer I had, in a sense, orchestrated. A promotion, moving back to the city to lead the very team I was a part of, significantly reducing my travel. The success of my hometown presence had even prompted them to consider establishing a rotating team of 3 to 5 representatives in larger surrounding towns, including my hometown. I accepted, and the 6-week transfer process began. 6 weeks, more than enough time to gather the final, irrefutable evidence. Upon my return to my hometown the next week, the final phases of my plan began to unfold. I approached Marcus, requesting a week of vacation time for Catherine, 2 weeks hence. "I want to send her and a friend or two away," I explained, "on a retreat before I make the biggest decision of my life for a second time." He beamed, pulling me into a bear hug, congratulating me on taking the leap again. I hugged him back, tight, but not with the camaraderie he imagined. He agreed, blocking out the week. "Don't tell anyone," I whispered. "I want it to be a big surprise." I knew, of course, that the office rumor mill would churn, but that, too, was part of the design. That night, I delivered the news to Catherine. "I've booked you and 2 friends a week at a tropical spa resort," I announced, feigning extravagant generosity. "All expenses paid. No questions asked. Just pick 2 friends and come back for the biggest surprise of your life." She screamed, a joyous, almost childlike shriek, her face alight with an avaricious glee, as if she had been handed the keys to a candy store. Then, the crucial next step. "Next week," I told her, "I'll be in the city preparing for a major client, one of my biggest accounts. I'll need some of my team to help, so I won't be back until the Monday you leave for the resort. I won't be able to see you off." A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, quickly replaced by the glow of the impending vacation. "It'll be worth it when you return," I assured her, my voice a soothing balm of deception. What I failed to mention was that I had booked 2 weeks of my own vacation, on the opposite side of the country, a time to mentally prepare for the storm that would erupt the moment she boarded her flight, and to savor the first quiet tastes of my carefully engineered freedom. On the Sunday, 2 weeks later, I flew back, the familiar landscape of my home state unfolding beneath the wing. I drove home, a calculated route, taking the back alley first. Sure enough, Marcus's car was there, a familiar, sickening sight. Just like the first night I had caught them, I parked a short distance away, a ghost in the shadows. I checked the security camera feeds on my phone. There they were, asleep in my bed, their bodies intertwined. No surprise, of course. I had accumulated 2 weeks' worth of similar footage, a damning library of their betrayal. My first call was to the police, my caller ID blocked. "I'm one of your neighbors," I stated, my voice hushed, concerned. "I've seen someone hanging around in their car in the alley behind Mr. Smith's house, occasionally passing something through windows to other cars. And they're always looking into his yard. I'm concerned they might be dealing drugs or planning a break-in." I provided Marcus's license plate number and a detailed description of him and his car. "We'll have someone there in a few minutes," the dispatcher assured me. "Thank you," I replied, and hung up. Then, I called Catherine. "I'm about 10 minutes from home," I told her, a manufactured urgency in my voice. "I know you're flying out tomorrow, but I desperately wanted to surprise you, just for a quick goodbye." Looking back at the camera footage later, I would laugh, a low, humorless sound, at the frantic commotion that erupted in my bedroom. In a blur of panic, Marcus, still half-dressed, exploded from the back door and into his car. It was, I reflected, a perfectly choreographed scene. As he peeled away, one of the patrol cars rounded the corner behind me. The officers, seeing Marcus speeding away, initiated a chase. I pulled into my driveway, feigned excitement as I greeted a flustered Catherine, and performed the usual rituals of an affectionate reunion. She eventually drifted back to sleep, her mind, no doubt, still reeling from the narrow escape. I, however, remained wide awake, the adrenaline coursing through me. The next day, her friends arrived, and the 3 of them were bundled into a car, chauffeured to the airport for their tropical spa retreat. After they drove away, I waited a few hours, then began the methodical execution of the next phase. I called a friend, a removalist, apologizing for the short notice. "I need my place packed and moved by Friday," I told him. He agreed, and I gave him specific instructions. Certain boxes, clearly marked, were to go directly to a storage facility. He confirmed it wouldn't be an issue. Then, with a chilling detachment, I began packing Catherine's belongings. Later that day, the call came from the police. They had apprehended a suspect fitting the description I had provided, and they had recovered property matching the items I had reported stolen. They requested my presence to identify them. I allowed myself a small, internal grin. Marcus's downfall was accelerating. I replied that I would be there shortly. Of course, when I arrived, some of the items were still unaccounted for, likely still in his house, which had yet to be searched. By this stage, the small town, with its insatiable appetite for gossip, was buzzing. News, good or bad, never stayed secret for long here. Marcus was disgraced, promptly fired from his position as managing director for drug possession and possession of stolen property. Our respective bosses, on behalf of the company, extended a formal apology to me later that week, a performative gesture of corporate rectitude. That night, I went to my parents' house, and, with a heavy heart, sat them and Rachel's parents down. I told them what had happened, omitting certain unsavory details, framing it as a straightforward betrayal. I explained that I was moving back to the city, having accepted a promotion, and that Catherine would not be joining me. They were initially upset, understandably, that I had kept them in the dark, but their anger softened into a quiet relief that I had handled the situation maturely, that I hadn't sunk to their level. They didn't entirely agree with ghosting Catherine, but after a few drinks, some shared laughs, and a few more tears for Rachel, I returned home. On Friday afternoon, after a week spent coordinating cleaners for the following week, listing my house on the rental market, and completing the various tasks necessary to sever my ties with the hometown office, I packed a few personal items into my car. I said goodbye to my parents, a silent farewell to the past, before embarking on the drive back to the city. Before leaving town, however, I made one final stop. Becky's house. Becky had been one of Rachel's closest friends, a confidant. She was the only other person, beyond my legal counsel, who was privy to the unfolding drama, though I had spared her the details of Marcus's involvement. Without her unwavering support, her quiet efficiency, I would not have been able to orchestrate everything with such speed and precision. I handed her a large manila folder, thick with the irrefutable evidence of Catherine's infidelity, the security camera footage, screenshots of messages, and a meticulously crafted letter from my attorney. This letter, along with several other legal documents, formally prohibited Catherine from contacting me and provided the precise details for accessing her belongings at the storage unit I had rented. After a brief, heartfelt goodbye, I left, the familiar streets receding in my rearview mirror, a chapter closed, a new one beginning. On Sunday morning, the inevitable deluge began. My phone buzzed and chimed with a relentless barrage of missed calls, urgent voicemails, and angry text messages. Catherine, it turned out, had returned home early. The rumor mill, operating with its usual efficiency, had alerted her to something being afoot in town. She arrived to find an empty house, a for rent sign prominently displayed in the front yard. Panic, raw and unvarnished, had driven her to my parents' house, where they, seeing her on their doorstep, simply closed the door in her face. Frantic, she had begun calling everyone she knew, until, by some stroke of fortune, Becky had answered. Becky, following my instructions, informed her that she had a package waiting. The ensuing explosion, a symphony of rage, entitlement, and accusation, echoed in the countless voicemails and texts I received. She accused me of setting up Marcus, of being deceitful, of destroying her life. A part of me, the part that still remembered the sting of betrayal, savored each indignant word. I half expected her to appear on my doorstep in the city, but nothing ever materialized. 5 weeks have passed since I left, since I embraced my promotion, since I penned the initial draft of this story, a raw, sprawling testament to my meticulously executed revenge. It was, I admit, far longer than this revised version, a torrent of detail spanning 14 pages. But much of it, I believe, was essential, crucial to understanding the precise calibration of justice. The question of Marcus, of why I pursued his ruin with such tenacity, lingered for many. After making discreet inquiries through friends back home, I learned his fate. He is facing several months in prison, a first offense, but the damage to his reputation, his career, is irreparable. Why such severity? He knew Rachel. He knew the depths of my grief. His betrayal was not merely an act of infidelity. It was a callous disregard for the sacred memory of my lost life, a deliberate wound inflicted on a still healing soul. I omitted certain crucial details, altered descriptive language, ensuring the story's generalizability, protecting myself from legal repercussions. The truth is, there was already ample evidence of his drug use in his own home. I simply provided the catalyst, the undeniable reason for the police to finally investigate. I have no regrets. As for Catherine, the questions were similar. Why not more? Why wait so long? The answer is simple: to gather irrefutable proof. She was, by her own proud declaration, a socialite, a woman whose identity was intricately woven into the fabric of her public image. Exposing her, stripping away that carefully constructed facade, was a more potent, more agonizing punishment than any direct confrontation. I wanted her to experience the precipitous fall, the crushing weight of public scorn. I am told she has since moved to another state, transferred, relegated to administrative duties after the town's rumor mill, a merciless engine of truth, dismantled her reputation. The legality of my actions, particularly in moving her belongings and sending her on an all-expenses-paid trip that was, in essence, a gilded cage, has also been questioned. Morally, I concede, it was a dick move, a calculated act of cruelty designed to build her expectations only to shatter them. But from a legal standpoint, my position was unassailable. In the time she lived with me, she had never updated any of her personal information, driver's license, voting registration, official residency, to reflect my address. My lawyer confirmed this during my meticulous preparations. Without concrete proof on paper, without meeting the de facto couple status, I was legally empowered to do precisely what I did, without fear of backlash. Justice, you see, is not always about grand pronouncements or swift retribution. Sometimes, it is a slow, methodical process, a silent gathering of facts, a precise calibration of consequences. It is about understanding the levers of power, whether financial, legal, or psychological, and pulling them with unyielding resolve. This is the story of how a quiet man, underestimated and overlooked, used the tools of the system to dismantle the lives of those who thought they could operate with impunity. It is a testament to the fact that not all wounds heal with time. Some fester, harden, and demand a precise, devastating accounting. And the quiet ones? They are often the most dangerous, for their silence is not weakness, but a prelude to the storm. Never underestimate the quiet ones.